Hi everyone, Miriam Pinellas with Hasidus' Medicine. Welcome back. I'm sorry for the break. I was tending to some responsibilities and taking some time for self-care, taking my own medicine, but it's good to be back. And we're up to part 5 on page 351 in our text. We are learning the Maamer Ani L'Dodi by the Lubavitcher Rebbe. And we've been discussing Elul as a time of the king being in the field. It's a time where Hashem is shining down into the world an infinite amount of goodness and mercy, known as the 13 Midot of Rachamim, and that it's this goodness and mercy and compassion that's shining and permeating the universe at this time that allows for the potential for us to come and do our soul's return, what's called teshuva, in the month of Elul to prepare for the high holidays in Tishrei, Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. And we learned about how the work that we do in this month will impact our Tishrei, and how it's this the ease of the king in the field without his crown and without the royal clothes that can reach us in a way that is not accessible when the king is in the palace and in the throne room, and more so that because the king is in the field and because the initiative of Elul can come from the Jewish people themselves, instead of being inspired and aroused but from above when the king is in his majesty on the high holidays, when one would think it's easier to connect because we're so overwhelmed with the power and the awe of the high holidays. The gift of Elul is that because it's so low-key in the field, it can come from us, from our own initiative, and that Hashem wants that, because he wants us to actualize ourselves, assert ourselves in the world. And this is a mimer I'm learning now with a group of mothers. I think it's something that's very crucial to parenting, because it's about creating a space, this field, creating a space for compassion and mercy, and how being a person who, and you don't have to be a parent for this could be at any role in your life, but being a space where a person feels low pressured and held in compassion and mercy and goodness. It's a lesson to us that will arouse the people in our lives, God willing, to be their highest self, to be their best self. And now we're going to learn on this part even more what this allows, what this does for a person. And this is the reason I love this mimer so much, this next part, because this changed my life. What this showed me was that I am loved by God for my essence as I am before anything that I do. So we're going to learn today that the essence of a Jew is higher and more precious to God than any mitzvah he can do or any teshuva that he does. Just by the nature of his existence, he is loved. She is loved. This is the message we must start absorbing for ourselves in this life, the self-love, and certainly with the people in our lives, to let them know our love is not conditional on what they do, but it's because of who they are. And that's what this part says. So in the Maamer Likutei Torah, the Alter Rebbe says that when the king's in the field, he shows a smiling countenance to all. And it goes on to differentiate what is a smiling countenance, receiving them pleasantly, versus a smiling countenance to all. And receiving refers to accepting something that existed before it was received. And showing a smiling countenance means showing one's own shining countenance that he possessed before he shows it. It radiates forth and is revealed to another person. So by receiving all pleasantly, the king shows that the desire of the people to greet him is accepted pleasantly by him. It existed before and is now accepted. So really what Elul allows for us is to bring out something that is already within us, which is that desire to greet the king, but it could be hidden from us based on where we find ourselves in life and our circumstances. Showing a smiling countenance indicates that when a person is aroused with a desire to turn to God and teshuva, a revelation of the smiling countenance is drawn down to him. That's the pleasure. He's shown pleasure. Hashem takes pleasure in himself, which is reflected in the smile of the king. And then the commentary goes on to explain what pleasure means in the realm of Chassidus. So Chassidus identifies pleasure, the word ta'anug, as it's associated with the very core of the soul. This I didn't know before learning this. So it says the soul's powers of emotion, intellect, and will, these are powers of the soul. Everything that we feel, we think, we do are all garments or extensions of our soul. So when a person is thinking and feeling and wanting, it's an outward expression of the soul. However, when a soul is feeling pleasure, it's turning inward and it's establishing contact with its core. So objects that bring the soul pleasure are a catalyst to awaken the soul and enable it to fully sense its own self. Wow. Okay. So it's saying whenever a person derives pleasure from a particular object, it's bringing him into contact with his soul. A song, a piece of art, an activity, something is waking up his consciousness to something deeper. It's not just that I'm enjoying something. There's something deep within me that's connecting to this activity or this song. Okay, so the Chassidus defines two types of pleasure, compounded pleasure and simple pleasure. The compounded pleasure is when something from the outside inspires me and I can experience my soul. So in that moment, there's outside object and my soul's pleasure. However, with simple pleasure, all that's felt is soul. Okay, so the more deep, the more for example, it's saying the greater the depth of a song or the intensity, it will add elements to the soul's experience of itself, whereas something more simple will not create as much diversion. So back to the text, when the king is deriving pleasure from receiving them, right, which is aroused by the teshuva of the people, receiving them pleasantly, and showing a smiling countenance is also translated as a laughing countenance. So the laughing countenance, the smile, is the essence of pleasure, pure pleasure that is not compounded by any other influence. So here we go. We're coming back to us, to the understanding that Hashem's love for a Jewish person is at their core. Why? It's showing that by showing a laughter, showing a smile. It says when a person laughs, they lose control. They lose a little consciousness of their self. And by doing so, they tap into the essence of their soul that is also unbounded. So when Hashem is showing us a smile, right, it's a core, simple pleasure, which far surpasses the pleasure from anything, from an outside factor. So this is just my favorite, probably might be my favorite piece of Torah ever. So the smiling countenance in the analog is the pleasure God takes in the Jewish people themselves, which is loftier than the pleasure that results from the Jews' observance of Torah and its mitzvos, and even loftier than the pleasure that results from the divine service of teshuva. So this is one of the reasons given for the advantage of a Baal teshuva, someone who returns to God in teshuva, over the righteous, is that the teshuva comes from the soul itself, that core self, which is above the Torah. It says, nevertheless, teshuva is just a preparation for the revelation of the pleasure in the Jews themselves, for the soul itself surpasses even teshuva. This pleasure lies within God's very essence, when the king shows a smiling countenance to the people, and this pleasure is then revealed to a person who is aroused with a desire to do teshuva, and this awakens within him as water reflects a face. So that smile that's given to us, we receive it, it's reflected. It awakens within us the pleasure of godliness, which is the core of our soul. So much so that the person's pleasure in godliness becomes the essence of his pleasure. And this is possible because godliness lies at the very core of his being. The soul of every Jew is an actual part of God. This gives him even more power to overcome any obstacles and hindrances and to turn to God into complete teshuva. So this is very special. And I hope you'll take time to think about this, because this is emes, this is truth. And I think this is an essential knowing for everyone, that it's not about what we do and don't do. What we do and don't do is for ourselves, for our self-expression and our ability to connect with godliness and spirituality and our soul selves. But before all that, we are loved as is. And what a gift to be able to give to ourselves. And then, of course, the beloved people in our lives. Okay. Wishing you a good week.